So, hey everyone, and welcome to the third episode of DevTool Diaries. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by the wonderful Sarah Polan, who I will go ahead and let introduce herself and talk about a little bit of who you are and your tech career so far.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be part of this, and I love the mission statement of tech. Yeah, DevTools Diaries, and I think pleasure to be here. Yeah, I guess the question is, where do you want to start? There's it's been a journey
um,
for sure, and definitely not a linear one. But I also think that that's part of the importance of sharing some of these stories and letting people hear that tech isn't always linear. It's not about computer science and then going straight into that role. I was listening to a Gartner webinar yesterday, and they were showing the different paths to achievement and how people kind of scale up and move into some of these leadership positions over time. And I think that was probably one of the first times I've seen an organization say, you need to look at it from the business value, and sometimes people from the business value move up into the technical side, and sometimes from people from the technical side move over to the business value side. So I really loved hearing that, and I think that inspired me even more to get atypical stories out there. Yeah, so I
I love that.
guess
So,
yeah,
yeah, sorry.
no,
um,
it's
Do you want me to ask a new question, or do you want to just go into it?
yeah. You can feel free to ask a question. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, it's super important to actually amplify the voices of folk who haven't had that traditional entry into technology, which is why I'm very excited to speak to you. So, yeah, please give the audience a bit of background. What did you do before tech? What's the journey been?
Yeah, it's been fast and furious, that's for sure. I started my adult life and my career as an opera singer. So I studied music. I have a bachelor's in music and studied opera. Then I moved over to Europe, and where I've been now for almost 17 years now. Um, and with the intention of studying opera, being at the conservatory for another couple of years, and then going back to the States. And obviously, that is not what unfolded whatsoever. But I sang professionally for a few years, and due to changes in my family and having kids, realized that the lifestyle for me it just wasn't healthy, and then on top of it trying to balance 6 weeks on the road with kids, it just wasn't going to be viable. So I just moved into kind of the first thing that I could find, which was in human resources, and I was working for Nike at the time. And that's where I really had my first experience with tech and technology, and a really great leader who kind of looked at my skill set and said, I know a lot of musicians who are actually really good at this tech thing. There seem to be um, a lot of things that are quite similar in the way that you approach things and the discipline that goes into these two different things. So human resources probably not your thing, but maybe you want to look at tech, and that really kind of set off a lot of ideas for me, and thought, well, maybe this is a viable option. Um, so at that point, I decided that I wanted to learn how to code, and I, do what all sane single parents do. Quit my job, went back to school, learned how to code, um, and came out on the other side as a software developer, and spent some time doing software development, until I realized that actually a lot of the practices that we had as developers and what we were trained to do weren't really secure. Um, so I was working just doing full stack development, and I asked my employer at the time, can I try to hack your application? They said, yeah, but you'll never get in. It's fine. And I think it took me about 24 hours to own the database. So I was like, well, this is actually really fun. Maybe I'll go down the security rabbit hole, because there's something that's just kind of missing, in terms of correlating security and development together. So then really rolled into the DevSecOps world, building things out, building programs out, and I've now moved into more of, CTO role, strategic advisory, and building out programs from there. So it feels really abrupt, that change, and especially if you say, I was an opera singer and now I'm in I'm in tech. But there really are a lot of things that line up, and they line up quite nicely in terms of, music is really just code. So I've been coding in one aspect since I was probably about 5 years old, and just putting these different modules together to evoke different feelings or different things, and come up with all of these different patterns, which then very much tell a story. Um, if you look at computer code, it's not so different. You're putting all these modules together, you're making them repeat so that you can solve a business problem. So your outcome's definitely different. Um, but how you get there, a lot of it's very similar.
What a journey. It's so interesting. When your manager said to you like technology, what was your immediate response like at the time if you remember back then?
I was really surprised. She she was somebody that I respected greatly, and really took the time to listen and understand what was going on, and how different things fit together. Um, so in my mind, she had a huge amount of credibility, and like I said, that respect for her. So when she said it, I think I probably had a very different reaction than if somebody had just said it off the cusp, or it was somebody that I didn't respect quite as much. Um, but coming from her, I really went, "Oh wow, okay, this might be a viable option," and was very intent on listening to her reasonings and why she thought that this might be a case. And so yeah, I really just took it and kind of ran with it from there. But it took a little while to set in and figure out how how I was going to go about it. I think one of the things I find so challenging in tech today, even, is, you want to build something, you want to build a product, or you want to build a program, and the variables that you need to get there, and they're just so many, and the question then is, how do I do that, and how do I get there? So when I decided to learn how to code, I didn't know how to go about it, because there was so much information out there, there were so many different languages, there was, applications in the business logic sense, there were applications in the DevOps sense of the underlying infrastructure. So I was really just completely overwhelmed with all of the possibilities that were out there. Um, so knowing my learning type and knowing how I operated, for me, the best option was something that was a little bit more structured, something that resembled a little bit more traditional education, because I knew that there was a whole program that kind of put things together. And even now, being in a position of leadership and strategic advisory, that's still very much imprinted in what I do. So I went back to school a few years ago. I got a master's in cybersecurity. I'm now on another journey to get another certification more oriented towards, the business side of things, and a bit like an MBA. Because for me, that learning is so critical and not stagnating. But then it's also, how do you get knowledge that's going to be applicable to what you want to do, and in a way that you're going to be able to kind of connect the dots and continue to grow and add knowledge and value to what you do.
It's cool. It's like having one person fully advocating for you and opening your eyes up to different possibilities to begin with. And then that humongous journey of wow, technology
Yeah,
is very big.
it is.
Where
It
do you
is
go?
huge. You know, I spent a long time as a secrets management expert. Like, who in this world would have thought that somebody needed to be an expert in secrets management? But that's the other thing that's just so cool about technology. Are There's so many niches that you can have, that if that's an opportunity for you to grow and develop a skill set, it's never going to be lost. So I think, keeping an open mind and not saying I have to be a software developer and this is the only thing I can do. There's front end development and back end development. Realistically, and the more we see some of these disruptive technologies come into play, I think the more people are going to have the opportunity to kind of carve their own path and go down these little niche roads that are going to be super useful, um, to society at large, but also really rewarding to those who want to really specialize in certain things. But I also think that it gives a lot of credit to the need for sponsors and mentorships within organizations, whether it's within the organization itself or outside of an organization, so that you have an external sounding board or you have somebody that you trust who you can bounce some ideas off of. Maybe sometimes they're going to say, yeah, no, think you're a little off on that one, but there are going to be times when they say, have you looked at this, and this? And that's going to be something that will resonate and hopefully, give you opportunities to look, and to find something that really brings value, makes you feel like you bring value. Because whether or not the industry in any particular job thinks you have value, sometimes that's kind of irrelevant, because you can deliver something and you can be the most performant on your team. But if you don't feel like that adds value to your day, you know, we have one life, and it's really important that resonates with you and doesn't create that cognitive dissonance. And I think when you are somebody who's in the minority, whether that's gender or just marginalized communities in general, um, that cognitive dissonance is just overwhelming. And between code switching and making sure people feel like you're credible and showing up in a way where when you're the authoritative figure, people view you as the authoritative figure. Um, it's important that what you do on a daily basis really ties into that, and brings you that fulfillment, so you don't burn out and so that you can continue to love what you do.
Some really important points there. And you also mentioned some really im- important challenges that folk may have if they are looking to move into any area of technology.
Yeah.
um, there'll be a lot of people listening here, right, who might be looking to make that step, similar to yourself, perhaps musical background, or perhaps a complete other background as well. What advice would you give people at the very first steps if they were considering moving into tech?
Breathe. There's so much out there. I remember the overwhelm. I'm still overwhelmed. If I sit down with colleagues and they start saying quantum computing and AI and security, and all of a sudden my brain starts swimming. And I've been in the industry now for a while and I have a good foundation. So don't let the buzzwords tie you up. Take it one step at a time and really understand what your learning style is. So understand what you need to do to make the next step and to move into technology. Maybe you are a great autodidact and you're really good with just online tutorials and you can do that for yourself and move into the industry like that. Um, Maybe you're a little bit more like me and really need that structure and that discipline and the framework in the sense of a more formalized education. There's no wrong way or right way. The other thing is there are some great hybrid roles out there on the market. So you don't have to be, an ace coder to move into the technical industry. There are ways, whether it's through like technical account management, where you can ease yourself in. I started because of just pure confidence as an integration specialist, so understanding how things integrated a little bit more, and then moved into the full, software development side of things. So there's just 100 different ways, but do what's right for you and do what fits with your learning style and your confidence level, because there's no sense in, beating yourself into the ground if you don't feel confident. But do continue to challenge yourself, absolutely.
Yeah. But the biggest takeaway is probably you're never going to know absolutely everything. Don't try to know absolutely everything, but find out what is interesting to you, and maybe you won't know that right at the beginning, but yeah, network with people, give it a go, find out how you learn best, and
Absolutely.
yeah, then run with it as well. So
Yeah, I
great
think also that
advice.
that that
um
networking part is so important as well, and something that I've taken for granted for years until probably the past 2 or 3 years, is just how important that network is and how much of this world runs on a network. And I think particularly for those who are moving into technology from a less traditional background, the CVs that you send in via LinkedIn, or anything that kind of has to go through that first step of being parsed by AI or systems, the likelihood that your CV is going to get kind of glanced over and then put to the side, it's really high. And realistically speaking, I don't want to discourage anyone, but if you can then go through a network, that starts to work a lot better. And people will then say, okay, this person is kind of pre vetted. Let's get them in the side door and we'll have a chat with them and see kind of what that achieves. So putting some weight on that network and spending time growing your network, particularly in quality. It doesn't have to be vast, but if you have people who are placed in the right spots and know the right people, that's almost more important than the number of people who are in your network.
Wholeheartedly agree with you. As a recruiter, especially, right, having someone that can advocate for you, and like your learning style, even if you might not have the skills, yeah, it is about what you know, yes, but it is definitely about who you know who can help propel you up there. And yeah, you're right. Sometimes as recruiters, internal or external, we're paid to find almost a perfect fit, right? So utilizing who you know is going to help you get your foot in the door. Just help you
Absolutely.
know what an environment's like as well, I think, because choosing that company at the beginning is important.
Yeah. Choosing the company is
I spoke
important.
to someone actually literally last week. Oh, sorry, I think we've got a lag.
I think we do too. Oh no. Ah.
You good?
Technology.
Go
Yeah.
respond to me now.
No, well, I was just going to say, even this conversation was brokered through a network. We're talking because we know somebody else who also comes from a non traditional background. Um, and because of something that she posted on LinkedIn, that connected us, and we were able to then sit down and have a little bit more of a conversation, and how we can, we're focused on some similar things, communities, etc., and how we can then work together. But without that network in place, this conversation wouldn't even be happening.
Yeah, spot on. It's cool. It's amazing the people you can meet through other people you know. So yeah, would definitely advise people. And I think people like wanting to get into tech would be surprised about how many people are actually willing to help and have conversations as well. There's so many people that approach me and I'm like, I can help you from a recruitment point of view, put you in touch with X person, Y person, like more than happy to do that. Let's make tech more accessible as well. So it's cool.
Yeah, no, I
It would be
completely agree.
good. It would be good. So we discussed a little bit about like salary equity, right? Talking about people entering technology from different backgrounds, potentially not knowing anything about like what salary is actually on offer. And I know you had we discussed salary equity when you were earlier on in your career. It'd be good to understand a little about your experiences there and like any advice you would give to folk who are taking a similar journey to you did into tech.
Yeah, man, one part of me hates putting this on gender discrepancies, pay discrepancies. Um, I know that coming out of my cohort and my coding cohort, there were three women, four women, and all of us kind of experienced the same thing where the guys, first of all, they would get interviews that we wouldn't, even though we all had the same experience across the board. But then when it came time to put offers on the table, ours were systematically lower, and by a good 15% sometimes. So I think going into that, and especially as somebody from a non-traditional background, there's a lot of hesitation to um, to negotiate or to know if it's allowed to negotiate, because it is your first job as a coder. There are people out there who've studied the computer science behind it, um, but looking back, um, there's a lot of value that people from non-traditional backgrounds do bring to the table in terms of business knowledge, analytics, and just general performance to the team. So I would definitely make sure you do your research, make sure you know what market conform is. The EU is making that a lot easier now. There's the rule now that has to be published, so it needs to be on the job description. I think all of those things help. Um, Going in, don't be afraid to negotiate, especially if the math's not mathing. Ask why. If that's because you don't have 10 years of coding experience, but you do have 10 years of business experience, it's okay to talk about that and say, yeah, maybe I don't have the coding experience, but I do have these um, these skills that are valuable to you. And I do know that more diverse teams move faster. They have higher levels of trust. That brings more in time to the business. So this is an investment for both of us. Really looking at that. And then conversely, if you're on the leadership side of things, it's really important also that you recognize, there is data that says more diverse teams are higher performing, that there's a drastic increase in revenue when teams are more diverse. And diversity comes in lots of different shapes and forms. It's, yes, marginalized communities, it's gender, but it's also background, education, where people came from, how they grew up. How I see the world as an American living in Europe is not the same as a European who grew up in Europe, but it's also not the same as a traditional American who spent all of their life in America. So there are nuances that people bring to the table that are going to be incredibly important to how you build your teams. And as somebody who's building a team, it's equally important for you to recognize how they're going to fit in and how they're going to augment your team, um, and ultimately help move you closer to your purpose and a better product over time.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice on both sides. And I think to add on to folk entering the tech industry, if you are unsure on what a market rate should be, utilize your network and utilize recruiters. More than happy to help. There are so many like salary bandings out there as well, and the real time banding you'll probably get is from recruiters who will be happy to give that information out as well. Um, and if you are not getting a good response from a business, if you do not feel like you are being offered your worth, then it's actually probably a sign that that's not your business.
Mm,
There will be another business out there, as hard as it seems. Don't put yourself through it from day docs. There are a number of fantastic businesses out there.
mm,
But no, I agree. Leaders have a huge part to play, and recruiters actually, in making sure people are knowing and asking for their worth, and saying if they are asking for less than their counterparts, irrespective of gender, right? But often gender. But we've all got a part to play in not just salary equity, but equity in general in terms of working environments, right? So yeah, utilize people around you, but
Oh, for sure. And
it's good to hear your point of view.
I think there's also nothing, well, mm, my personal piece of advice would be never accept or decline an offer when they give it to you. Always take it, think about it, look to see where it fits within the market. You're naturally going to have questions that come up because it's not going to just be about salary, but it's also going to be about the entire benefits package that backs that up as well. So take your time. Really say, "Great, thank you so much for giving me this offer. I really appreciate it. I look forward to the possibility of working with you. I'd really like to take 24 hours a week to review this offer to make sure that, I have I've addressed all of my concerns and all of the questions that I might have around this. Can I have X number of days?" Um, and really, anybody who's looking for somebody who really wants a good fit in their team and wants somebody who's going to um, really add value and, yeah, I guess anyone who's building a high performing team, they're not going to say no. They're not going to bat an eye. They're going to say, take the time that you need, check back in with me, let me know if you have any questions, because that's all part of building a trust relationship. And that's all part of making sure that everybody is getting what they need equitably. And from where I sit, that's what I would also expect from an employer. Anybody who pressures me into giving a response in 24 hours, you know, that's just the response.
Red
What are
flag.
you going to give me in terms of what you expect on a day to day working basis as well? And are your what yeah, are your requirements and what your expectations actually realistic in that case then?
Spot on. I have actually, not in the 5 years I've been recruiting, had anyone give those 24-hour deadlines. Thank goodness. I don't think there'd be a sort of business I'd want to partner with, to be honest with you. But you do hear it as well. And yeah, it's a red flag, right? We're spending so much of our time at work. It needs to be happy, healthy, psychologically safe space. So
Exactly.
spot on. Let's um, let's talk about your personal growth. Super exciting. First line of code in 2017, field CTO at Hashicorp now. Like, that is absolutely incredible. Love to see it. Like, talk to us about your journey. What would you equate your success to?
Oof. Um, you know, my golden rule is that if I'm not learning in an organization, um, whether that's, personally how to manage my life and balance all of the plates, or if that's just knowledge base, that's my cue that it's time to move on. And that's typically something that I've been quite upfront with employers about. And, how long do you see yourself here? Well, as long as I have a growth path, as long as I can continue to contribute and feel like I'm getting better as a professional, and it's also bringing value to my life, then I'm here. If we get to a point where I don't feel like there's a growth path, um, that I'm not learning new things, then it's probably time to move on. So I definitely had a few quick successions in terms of growth. A lot of that's just where they were in the business or what I was learning at the time. But I am constantly on the search for knowledge in various ways, however I can get them. Conferences, webinars. I'm somebody who tends to run a little bit more introverted, so I really like smaller gatherings as opposed to like the big conferences. Um, but yeah, like I said, I did my master's. So I redid my master's in 2021. I graduated in 2021 in cybersecurity. I decided that that was an industry that was, you know, really ready to take off, but a lot of people didn't know a lot about it. And I looked at that as I'm working in tech. I'm pretty hands on at this point in time. The tool sets, they're constantly changing. What can I learn that's going to be a constant and be able to give me a foundation to build my skill set off of? So I actually decided to study like the policy and compliance side of cybersecurity and do engineering for that type of system, which has proven to be really beneficial because it gives me a more well-rounded opportunity at how do I look at these things. And yeah, like I said, I just started a program now that's more about the CTO journey. What does that look like? How do you build these teams? How do you make sure that you're building dynamic organizations that respond to what you're trying to build out as a product? So things like around Conway's law and innovation, but then all the way through to how do you complete that product cycle? How do you balance risk? Um, that's where I am in my journey right now. Those are the things that really interest me. They're the way things that give me an idea of where I want to be on my career path and that growth path. Um, so that's what I'm drawn to, and I think I do my best to encourage even my kids to do the same. If there's something that's calling out to you that you want to just learn more about, go dive in. Like there are 100 different ways to gain knowledge or to get exposure. So that's really, yeah, something that I advocate for a lot. And it was very much a value in my family growing up. I grew up in a very academically oriented family, where knowledge was really the foundation and very, very valued.
That's awesome. And I think, yeah, when we first spoke, just all of the work you've done on the side in terms of like education, continue to learn, like it's no surprise to anyone that hard work does help you succeed, right? It is what it is, and it's
It
obviously
is.
paid off for you.
It
And
is
it's
absolutely.
great to keep learning. It's so important.
It is. I think so. The education part, absolutely. Also, learning how to build a network and what goes into building a network and the type of people that you need to be able to build a network with in order to move up. And then sponsorship. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but having somebody who's going to be in the room advocating for you, who understands where you want to go, what you want to do, and what your skills and weaknesses are, um, that's for me has been probably the most important part of being able to take all of these steps, and in some cases just massive leaps. Having people who have my back, who understand that I know where that threshold is in terms of the risk and being able to complete a task, but also being willing to take that risk.
It's cool, and you know what I think having a sponsorship, also having sponsors links to doing a great job, right? When
Mm-hmm.
people know they can depend on you, they're more likely to help you and support you as well. So it all goes hand in hand. It's really cool. Something you've touched on a couple of times that I'm really keen to dig into with you. Being a working mum in technology, it's absolutely incredible. It's always amazing when we speak to people who have the space that they need to work and be a parent, because we're going back 30, 40 years, we didn't always have that, right? But yeah, it'll be awesome to hear about like your experience being a mum in tech and like how that's affected yourself and your family.
Whew. Um, so this is a part where I definitely want to make sure that it stays really real. I think we have a tendency to talk about parenthood and being a mom as the most important thing, and everybody loves it, and there's not a difficult moment. And for me, that is so untrue. um, I love my kids. I think they are absolutely my North Star in terms of how I show up and what my values are. Integrity is everything to me. And it took me having kids to understand why that was so important, and the impacts that that has on the people around you, and just really showing up for everyone. But showing up for everyone is exhausting. And I think, I don't know if the microphone just picked up the little pings from my phone. I have my daughter, asking me, can I have a sleepover? And it's like, it's the middle of the working day, but it doesn't stop, and you still have to go back and forth. The challenge, and part of my challenge, is that I am a single parent, so I don't have anybody backing me up on the other end, and I have some great friends, but that day to day, the getting the dinner on the table, going to swim lessons, you know, all of that gets really heavy over time, and it's how do I fit what I need to do and make sure that at work, people aren't stopped and blocked because my kid has to go to swim lessons. Um, and it's hard. It's really, really hard. And there are days that I crawl into bed at the end of the day and I have nothing left. So finding those times and building things into your schedule where you can find a little bit of time to recharge. For me, sports, being active is something that's really important to me, and I just function better and I'm a better human being when I do it. So making sure that before I do crawl into bed at night, my sports clothes for the morning are laid out. And then there's just no question. I just pull them on in the morning, and once they're on, I'm out the door. I go for my run. I take the dog for the walk. So making sure that they're built in triggers within your schedule to take the time to really make sure that you have the headspace to do what you need to do.
Yeah, I appreciate the realness. It's not always easy. Is it so much to juggle as well? But yeah, what you said reminds me of Atomic Habits. In the end,
Yeah.
just have to do it. It's about discipline, not motivation, and it all comes
Yeah.
intertwined in the end.
Oh, and when it's 2 degrees out and it's pouring down rain and I don't want to go for a run, you because you've built that in and you do have that habit and you've made it as frictionless as humanly possible, then it makes it easier. So if you don't have the barrier to entry, then it really, really does help. And I do love Atomic Habits. I think that there's a lot of really great actionable advice in that book. So if anybody's
Yep.
really looking, how do you build good habits into kind of into your day to day, I would absolutely recommend that book.
So would I. Big advocate. um, we also spoke a little bit about like how becoming a mum increased your skills in
Mm-hmm.
general, right? And I think we also discussed a book, My Uterus is a Feature and Not a Bug, but just
Yeah.
how like things have changed. Do you want to give a little bit of insight on that side to the audience as well for you?
I've had to become a much more productive and efficient human being. There are just not enough hours in the day to do what I need to do. So anything I can build into my schedule that reduces any kind of cognitive load, I'm all for it. And if I, sit down and I put my head down, I can crank out probably a half day's worth of work in a couple hours if I really have to. It takes a lot of energy, but being able to juggle all of that. Also, logistics. I had no idea the logistics that went into having kids. Making sure that the schedules are operating smoothly, that somebody can pick up this kid and take them there, and somebody else can pick the kid up and bring them home. And oh no, my flight got canceled, so I'm stuck in London. What am I going to do? Because nobody's there to take care of the kids. Okay, how do we manage all of this? So, you get a lot of really great life experience and leadership experience by having kids. Crisis management, looking at the bigger picture, how do all of these things kind of stack into each other, priorities. Um, so yeah, it's definitely made me a better employee, a better leader. Um, One of my favorite things is don't give too many options, but still give enough options so that people can feel in control, like they're making a decision. Um, so yeah, the wisdom that comes with children is infinite. And I do joke sometimes. It feels like what I do at home and how I handle my home life translates very much to what I do at work and how I operate at work. But just a very different vocabulary. We're talking about tech and, you know, not sweets and sleepovers, basically.
Oh, it leads to great problem solving skills, I think.
That is for
Work
sure.
being a working parent, right?
Poker face, also,
I love that.
how do you have a good poker
Um,
face?
yeah, love that. Um, it would also be good to talk a little bit about like tech accessibility and just how like that has changed your life as in working for tech, working in tech in general.
Um, I mean, one of the biggest changes and probably most tangible is the socioeconomic change that it gave me. I was an illegal immigrant. I didn't have papers. Um, I had about 10,000 euros to get me through a year. Um, so when I pivoted into the tech industry, that unequivocally changed my life and really made it so that a lot of that financial fear went away. Um, and being able to provide for my kids and give them not even a good education, but a great education, and being able to have holidays, all of that stuff. It wasn't something that I grew up with, but also was something that I thought I was never going to be able to have. So pivoting into the tech industry really has allowed me to do that, and it's one of the reasons that I am so vocal on platforms such as yours, but also just on LinkedIn, making sure that there's more equity there, because for the financial independence of women in large and marginalized communities, it's so important, and to have them understand that this is a viable option, and it's a barrier to entry that's, if you look at doctors, lawyers, things like that, the barrier to entry is pretty low. What you need in terms of an education, if you're really motivated and really want to move into the industry, it's very attainable. So being able to vocalize that and make sure that people understand that messaging, and that financial stability and financial independence, it's not taboo, and it really shouldn't be taboo, and it's okay to want that, and it's okay to aspire to that. Just know why you're doing it, and know you know that you can have that as well.
I love that and everything you said. Like, want to be able to provide for your kids. I think all parents want that, right? And yeah, the message that needs to get out there. I mean, I think I said this to you. I think about my own experience, like not even considering tech and then moving into tech recruitment, having absolutely no idea what the roles did until I was 23 years old and had graduated my degree, having no idea about how well paid it was and how cool and multifaceted it is, like getting that out there for underrepresented people. And again, lower barrier to entry compared to being a doctor. It's a good one. Um, it is so important, so important, and I think companies should probably be doing a little bit more, to be honest, to showcase that as well. Do you have any like ideas, or have you seen anything in the market that companies are actually doing to market tech as a career for more underrepresented folk?
Yeah, we're starting to see, and Hashicorp, for example, we have like an early careers program. So we'll go into the universities or the schools and really talk to people much younger. I think that's really where it starts. I think, you know, from my perspective, we need to go a lot lower even. So we know that gender bias and bias in general starts as young as 6. So we really need to be shifting that super super early in the career cycle. But kind of going back to your question, making sure that there is visibility. Um, I have a friend, and anytime I can shout out to her, I absolutely do. She runs a program called New Tech Kids, and I believe it's Operation Tech, where she goes into the schools and teaches them about the broader concepts and some of the repercussions and benefits of these different things. So I saw tomorrow she's going into some inner city schools to talk about privacy, for example, and cybersecurity. Um, and so for her, it's so important to be in these schools because she's also a black entrepreneur. And so when she goes into into more inner city schools, the representation is so critical, and making sure that the representation is out there. I just I didn't realize how important it was even to me until I saw our president get up on stage, who's a woman, um, and go, oh, okay, I'm not fighting a losing battle here. This is something that over time I could attain, or moving up into the C-suite, which is definitely something that I aspire to. Um, it is possible, and it's becoming more and more possible. And the more diversity we see on these higher levels, and the more diversity we see just across the board, the easier this is going to be for all of us. So from my perspective, I do it for the generations who are to come. There are days that it gets really heavy, and I don't want to get out of bed, and I don't want to necessarily, continue the fight. And then, I think my
That's
girls,
amazing.
my girls, they're going to hopefully have an easier time in this world, and the path is already a little bit more paved for each generation to come.
I just lost you at the end there. Are we back?
I think we're back.
Okay. Sorry. The ending of that just dropped completely.
No worries.
um, that's okay. And your friends, did you say tech? It dropped out as well. I feel like it's so cool to
Oh
hear. Do
no.
you
It's
mind
me
if we
too.
redo that bit?
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, so she has a foundation, New Tech Kids, and then as her son grew up and went to high school, I believe it's called Operation Tech. I can't remember the exact name. She's a black woman entrepreneur, also from a diverse background. She was a journalist before, but her mission is to get education and tech education specifically um, into schools, but also into inner city schools. And for her, it's so important, and for I guess more for the students to see somebody who looks like them. So you know, a black woman coming in talking
Hmm.
about tech, and everything that's possible around that, but also teaching them critical thinking skills around that. So whether that's some of the repercussions of AI or privacy, being able to understand the broader picture when it comes to computer science and just computers in general.
That's amazing what she's doing. I'm gonna have a look into it. Or please link me after as
Yeah,
well.
I
It's so
absolutely
so
will.
important. Like massive kudos.
We did a podcast with her not too long ago,
We'll
and she's
link it at the
just
bottom of this podcast. Because we're having such bad lag.
the one day I actually need
Are
my
we on the
Wi-Fi
same
to
time?
work.
Okay. One last question, and
All
I'll just
right.
make sure that the lag bits are cropped out. Um, okay, cool. Thank you, Sarah, so much for giving some insight. Your friend sounds fantastic, so we'll absolutely link her foundation below to close things off, and thank you so much for being part of the podcast. It's been phenomenal. It'll be good to understand any predictions that you have for any like tech trends that are going to grow or boom for the rest of 2024.
Ooh, the rest of 2024. I think, we're just starting to open the possibilities for AI. And some of the implications that's going to have for the broader economy in general, I think. Um, I'm really interested to see how everything starts playing out because based off of my experience and what I've seen with some of our customers, there's a lot of um, optimization that still has yet to happen when it comes to um, cloud infrastructure. So I think first step in really being able to deploy AI on broad scales is being able to streamline some of this architecture and clean things up. So I think this year, large organizations, due to the complexity, are just going to have a harder time with it. So probably this year into next year. And then I think from there, we'll really start seeing more general implementation of AI across the board. And then also with AI, I think there's probably some new security implementations that are also going to start popping up. I know Palo Alto, for example, they've started a whole new integrated platform about how they want to make sure that the full security kind of life cycle is all plugged together nicely to make sure that people can integrate things a lot more easily. So I think cleanup, ease and simplicity, and AI are probably the next year and a half that we'll see.
Interesting. I can see that from what I know on the market. So cool. Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so, so much for taking part. We'll link your LinkedIn profile below if anyone would like to reach out. And yeah, everyone, please feel free to connect with Sarah. She'll be more than happy to help.
Thank
Bye.
All right. Are we back on the same?
You done? We done? I can't tell.
I can't tell either. I didn't want to talk over the end of you. But thank you so much for
So,
having me. It's been
hey
a
everyone.